Okay, good afternoon and welcome to today's meeting of the West Devon Borough Council Hub Committee. Welcome to all those members present and officers present, those that are joining online and any members of the public that may be joining online. Item 1 is apologies for absence, and Mr White, I've had 2 apologies. One is from Councillor Leach and one is from Councillor Ratcliffe.
That's the same 2 as me, thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Item 2 is declarations of interest. In accordance with the Code of Conduct, members are invited to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests, other registrable interests or non-registrable interests, including the nature and extent of such interests they may have in any items to be considered at this meeting. Does anybody have any declarations of interest? Nothing to report, Mr White. Item 3 is items requiring urgent attention, and we do have one today. The agenda supplement that was sent around to everybody, which relates to a recommendation from the recent meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Which relates to the EV charging points policy. Let me find the exact thing if I can. Draft EV strategy plan, which has also been circulated. It's a very interesting and informative plan aimed at increasing the number of EV charging outlet points within the borough and reducing emissions from vehicles and reducing the council's light vehicle emissions as well. The recommendation coming forward from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee is that we approve that recommendation and the accompanying plan. Does anybody have any questions? We're very fortunate having Councillor Wood here and Adam as well to answer questions on our behalf. Anyone have any questions on what looks to me like a very good policy? No questions coming forward. Mr White, do I need to move a recommendation? Sorry, I have one question coming forward. Councillor Crozier.
Thank you, Leader. The only question I'm going to ask is that we have plans to put some EV chargers in. They've been much delayed by a number of reasons. I'm just wondering, are we getting any nearer? Having been in Launceston last week and seeing they've got 8 and provision for 10 in their big car park, the old cattle market, I'm thinking that we're getting left behind.
Are you happy to pick that one up?
A bit of that question. It was about Launceston, yeah?
Yeah. My question was, where are we getting with the EV chargers that we have in the plan already, which was supposed to be delivered probably 12 months ago, whereas our neighbouring borough in Cornwall, Launceston, have 10 recently installed in their cattle market car park. Not all are operating at the moment, but several are.
Thank you, Councillor Crozier. It's a good question, and there are lots of reasons why we haven't, and mostly it's because the project that we're delivering is dependent upon falling in with Devon County Council and their plans. And I wanted to say, I don't know if anybody watched Spotlight. It should be compulsory watching Spotlight, but Spotlight last night was about Dorset and how they are really falling behind as well with their EV charging and how worrying it is. And I think to a large extent we're all in the same boat in the southwest with being on catch up and trying to sort of really get this going. And this is why, and thank you, Councillor Jory, for putting this forward on as this kind of urgent agenda item and bringing it to us now, because it is really important that we get on with this strategy now and give ourselves the best chance we can to get these EV chargers in. I don't know if there's you know, what chance there will be for the summer when all the holiday makers come down. But I think we're all in the southwest acutely aware of the situation we're in. Thank you. Is that okay? Do you want to add anything, Adam?
Yeah, that's really good. Councillor Wood, all I can add really is the update that our car park specialist put in members' bulletin a couple of weeks ago probably still stands in terms of the latest position on our charging points at the moment. And obviously we'll probably be taking learnings from the circumstance we've had this time with the private sector company that we're working with through the Deleti scheme. And the government's new charging fund, the local electric vehicle infrastructure fund, has opened now. So we have a meeting scheduled, planning a meeting with Devon County Council and all partners across Devon to formalise some plans about what we're going to do for the next fund.
Thank you. Councillor Crozier, if you want to come back on that.
Some of the problems I understand are about supply issues. Are we having a meeting with NGED on how we're going to overcome the supply issues? Because they must be principal as they supply the electricity to our towns and villages for this to actually happen.
So there hasn't been any meetings recently that I'm aware of, but I can get an update from the car park specialist to find out whether that's happened. Obviously, the DNO will be involved with any sort of fund applications we put in with Devon County Council in the future. And some of the issues with the charging points at the moment aren't just on DNO issues. We've got issues with way leaves on some of the sites as well that need sorting out.
Thank you. Councillor Ewings.
Thank you, Councillor Jury. At the ONS meeting, we had a very long debate about this. I think it was over half an hour just on this item. And Adam and Councillor Wood were put through the ringer slightly. So I know it's had a really good talking point at ONS. I just want to mention something that was mentioned to me earlier, over the weekend actually, that on some housing estates in Tavistock, there are a lot of EV charging points coming from people's houses, going across pavements where they haven't got parking spaces. Is this something that we should be not looking into per se as to, you know, to cause aggravation, but shouldn't this be that we are heightening our awareness that there are so many electric cars on the road, you know, it is becoming a pedestrian trip hazard, and you know, it is in the way of people with particularly sight issues or having to use disabled facilities. And I wonder if there's anything we can do or whatever, you know, can be done on some of these tight housing estates where there is no parking whatsoever by your house, and you're having to go out from your house across, you know, your garden and then, you know, across the pavement to get to your car. I just thought it was something to bring forward.
Thank you, Councillor Ewings. Can I bring Councillor Mott in on that one?
My understanding, and I'm happy to be corrected on this, is that if you have an EV on the new sites and the new housing estates that are being built, the EV charging points are only being put into the houses that have off-road parking. Therefore, there should not be an issue with cables going across pavements, etc. But if it's an old estate, then and that EV charging point has been put in afterwards, then there's not a lot we can really do to mitigate against that, other than rely on the common sense of the occupier.
They're up in Greenlands in Tavistock, from what I understand.
Thank you. I suspect part of the answer, I'll come to Councillor Wood in a second, is which is mentioned in the in the strategy, is working with partners, because I'm sure that Devon County Council, as the Highways Authority, would need some joint working there in order to get something sorted. Councillor Wood, did you want to say anything else on that point?
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Ewings, for bringing that. It certainly is a health and safety issue to be dragging a charger across a pavement, and I think, but I would have to look into it, and maybe Mr. Williams will know about it. But I think, you know, if if companies are putting chargers into people's houses, personal chargers, I think they have a responsibility around, you know, whether it's going to be dragged over the pavement, and so does their householder really on that. You know, I know there's a choice and people have to think about this, but you know, I think we all have a responsibility to each other to sort of keep ourselves safe. But I don't know. I think, yeah.
Hi. Yeah, that's right. So there is an element of common sense to it. So we will expect people to put down cable covers on the high and the path if they're charging a vehicle and they've put a charger in after the fact. But it is an issue that the Devon County Council are acutely aware of. Within their draft EV strategy published last year and consulted on over Christmas, they will be looking into trialling charging gullies in select locations and to find a way of fast-tracking that process, because obviously they'll need to take an application from the householder to break up the path to put in the gully and then put the charging ducting through. But through a testing approach and trialling approach, they can test that out in select locations to roll it out further across the county.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Councillor Vashon, did you have a question?
Yeah, slightly different tack. Is there any sort of standardisation for EV charging points? Because obviously different manufacturers, vehicle manufacturers have different systems and different powers and weights of charging. Is that a case that is preventing EVs going in quicker?
It's certainly a problem. We're not at a stage where there's any sort of technological agnostic kind of process in terms of what an EV charger looks like. There's standards around disability access kind of emerging at the moment, but you are right, there are different operators and they have different connections and different charging speeds, and there isn't kind of a uniform approach to that just yet. And it's just a case of when a new technology comes in, you're going to get that innovation, you're going to get those companies are going to want to try and put their stake in the ground and say, we want this standardised approach, and others might have a different opinion, and it's only through that going through the market will a popular one emerge, I think.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? In which case, I'd like to move a recommendation which I will quote Mr. White, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the committee approves the content of the draft EV strategy and for officers to undertake a public consultation in line with the Council's consultation and engagement strategy. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Wood, thank you. Members, any debate on this issue? Clearly, this is something that we need to address, and I think the strategy is a really good start on this, and let's get the consultation underway and see what we can move forward. Time is of the essence. All those in favour?
That is unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Agenda item 4, members, is confirmation of minutes. The minutes have previously been circulated. Refusing to come up on my screen at the moment. If we can go through the minutes for accuracy and completeness, members, is there anything on page 1 of the minutes? Page 2? Page 3? Page 4? 5? Page 6? Page 7, page 8, page 9. In that case, I will take those minutes as being a true record of the meeting and be happy to sign those later, Mr. White. Second, complete system failure. That's better, okay. Agenda item 5 is public questions. I've not been advised of any, Mr. White.
Me neither. Thank you, Leader.
So we'll move on to item 6, the Hub Committee Forward Plan. The Forward Plan, members, has been circulated, setting out the future work of the committee. Does anybody have any questions or queries on any of the items within the Hub Committee Forward Plan? Are we happy to accept that as informing our future workload, members? Thank you. We'll move on to item 7, which is the month 10 revenue budget monitoring. And I'd like to ask Councillor Edmonds to introduce this item. Councillor Edmonds.
Thank you, Chair. The Revenue Budget Monitoring Report covers the period to the end of January 2023, or month 10 of the financial year, and reflects the combined impact of rising inflation and increasing interest rates. The projected year-end deficit of £35,000 in this report has reduced from the projected deficit of £85,000 at the end of November 2022. The reduction being mainly due to an increase in investment income as the Bank of England base rate increases to its current level of 4%. The projected year-end shortfall in car parking income has increased from £90,000 in November 22 to £110,000 as we continue to experience the impact of COVID and the shift to online shopping. The planning income shortfall is now forecasted to be £175,000 at the year end, an increase of £55,000 from the November figure. An updated schedule of reserves is attached to Appendix A, showing predicted earmarked and unearmarked reserves of £9.233 million at the 31st of March 2023. Mrs Henstock and her team continue to monitor budget performance monthly to identify budget variations and, as the table on page 21 of the report shows, take prompt management action when required. Finally, Chair, the report recommends that the Hub Committee notes the forecast income and expenditure variations for the 2022-23 financial year and the overall projected deficit of £35,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Members, any questions on the Revenue Budget Monitoring Report? Councillor Mott.
Thank you, Chair. I note in Appendix A on page 25, we have a line for broadband community support and that nothing has been spent on that. Have we had any viable schemes come forward for that funding? Or because my understanding was that we were going to draw up a template for communities to be able to use, to be able to apply for that funding. Has that been done?
Well, I think there was one scheme that we felt may come forward, but in the event, I don't think our assistance was required. And I'm really not sure regarding the template. I don't know if anyone may have got a response.
Thank you, Leader. I don't know if Mr Molyneux is able to give any update on that at all. Or we can get our broadband officer to circulate a response, Leader, to the Hub Committee members.
Leader, I can answer that, actually, if that's okay, if you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you, Mr Molyneux, if you'd like to go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm afraid we haven't done a template. That's because each scheme varies so much, but we haven't had a scheme that we've been able to use that funding for yet. And we've been working with CDS, and we're waiting for the latest announcement of the government funding, which will hopefully prioritise the areas that need the broadband the most. So we're still hopeful that government funding will be provided. I think we're due to bring an update back to either the next overview scrutiny committee or the one after, in terms of with the latest position on that. I know that's not a complete answer and probably doesn't answer Councillor Mott's question, but it's the best I can do, I'm afraid.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Molyneux. Does that partly answer your question, Councillor Mott?
Partly, perhaps somebody could get back to me later, please.
I think I do know, of course, we have had one scheme in my ward in Sydenham Damerel, which in the end was self-financing and didn't need to draw on that. But that money, as I understand it, is still available. So will you be able to get back to him in a bit more detail? I think Mrs. Buckley is saying yes.
Yes, certainly, Leader. We'll get a response circulated to all members. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? In which case, could I ask Councillor Edmonds to make the recommendation?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I move the recommendation, which is on page 15 of the agenda papers. Thank you.
Seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Cheadle. Members, any debate on this report? In which case, we'll move to a vote. All those in favour of the recommendation?
That is 7 and unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. We'll move on, members, to item 8, Capital Budget Monitoring 2022-23. And if I could ask Councillor Edmonds to again introduce this report. Councillor Edmonds.
Thank you, Chair. The report provides members with an update of the capital budget as at the 31st of January 2023. As mentioned in the January report to Hub, the narrative around capital schemes previously included in the Capital Monitoring Report has been moved to the Integrated Performance Management Update, which is presented to this committee on a quarterly basis. Details of the capital expenditure against budget are set out in the monitoring report, which you will find at Appendix A, and members are reminded that this is an exempt item. Members will have noted that all capital projects are within the individual capital budgets approved by Council in February 2022, and there is currently an underspend against this year's capital budget. Appendix C summarises the Council's financial responsibilities as the accountable body for the Tamar Trails. It is likely that various timber infrastructure will require renewal over the next 3 years, and as the leaseholder, the Borough Council is required to ensure safe access to the trails. It is recommended that the total cost of the infrastructure renewals, estimated to be £55,000, be added to the capital programme over the next 3 years and financed from the Budget Surplus Contingency Reserve. A list of Section 106 deposits is shown in Appendix B, totalling just under £1.5 million. As at the end of December 2022, 128,000 has been spent on various revenue and capital projects, and a further 684,000 has been committed. Details of these projects are also shown in Appendix B. The report recommendations, Chair, are that the Hub Committee resolves to endorse the contents of the report and to approve the additional capital budget of £55,000 over the next 3 years for the Tamar Trails infrastructure renewal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Members, if we have any questions, and obviously please bear in mind that Appendix A is exempt, so if you do have a question that is coming from that appendix, please declare so first. Any questions, members? Councillor Cheadle.
I had a question about the Tamar Trails. Is there any derived income from the Tamar Trails, or is it all expenditure?
Leader, I think we have Mr. Sekula on the Teams meeting.
Yes, I wonder if Mr. Sekula is online, whether he might be able to answer that. I do know that there is some income from car parking, and I think from a cafe or something similar on site, but perhaps Mr. Sekula could answer that.
Yeah, good afternoon, members. Thank you, Leader. Yeah, we do run an annual deficit on the trails as a whole. So we run at a deficit of around £25,000 a year, mainly due to the high level of expenditure on the various leases that we hold. We do get a little bit of income back in terms of the car park. I think we run at about £25,000 income on the car park, and we also take an income on the Tamar Trails Centre as well. But when you take into account expenditure on repairs and maintenance, and also the vast number of leases we hold, we do run at a deficit of about 25,000.
Thank you, Mr. Sekula. Any other questions, members? Councillor Crozier.
We're talking about timber infrastructure only, because I have had some complaints about the state of some of the tracks.
This report only mentions the timber aspect, but Mr. Brooks, would you have any further knowledge?
I think it's both the investment in the timber structures, but it is general trail maintenance as well. So it's not purely isolated stretches. It's ensuring that they're all kept to the standard that we would want them to be at a landscape scale, keeping it safe, keeping people active, and making sure people can use them and enjoy them.
Thank you, Mr. Brooke. Any other questions, members? In which case, can I please ask Councillor Edmonds to move the recommendation?
Thank you, Chair. So I move the recommendations on page 29 of the agenda papers.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Cheadle, thank you. Members, any debate on this report? In which case, we'll move to a vote. All those in favour?
That's unanimous for the recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Members, we'll move on to item 9, write-off reports, Q1 and Q2 of 2022-23. And if I could ask Councillor Edmonds to introduce this report. Councillor Edmonds.
Thank you, Chair. The write-off report covers the period from the 1st of April to the 30th of September 2022. And the tables attached to the report summarise the write-off activity undertaken during this period. The first report recommendation requests the committee to note that the Section 151 officer has authorised write-offs totalling £81,644.55p, and the second recommendation is that the Health Committee approves the write-off of debts in excess of £5,000, totalling £45,884.15p, with the total amount to be written off for the period of £127,528.70. This represents an increase on the corresponding period in 2021-22 as individuals and businesses use insolvency measures as a way of discharging their indebtedness. Collection rates for the 22-23 financial year are on track, and any debts for previous years continue to be pursued. At our January meeting, agreement in principle was given for a supplementary write-off policy to be established. The proposed write-off policy is now attached at Appendix A, which supplements our existing debt recovery procedures. Report recommendation number 3 recommends that the supplementary policy is adopted with effect from the 1st of April 2023. Members will note the proposed changes to the write-off reports from April of this year, which will result in clearer reporting of debt written off in year in relation to the overall yearly collection rate. And finally, Chair, the 3 report recommendations referred to are set out on page 41 of the agenda papers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Members, any questions on this report? Councillor Cheadle.
It's a relatively minor point, but looking at table 4 of the report and the non-domestic rates collection percentage, we're around about 93.7, it says here, and our friends in South Hams are at 98.1. And I just wonder if we use the same procedures. I assume we do. So there's obviously a difference between what West Devon gets up to and what South Hams gets up to in this area.
Thank you. I wonder whether Mrs. Hotchkiss might be in a position to answer that one.
Yeah, something I'm really, sorry, can you hear me? Yeah, something I'm really keen to do is to start to address that difference between the two councils. I don't think it's necessarily that more effort is being put into one or the other. I've already flagged that that collection performance isn't particularly good, and aspirationally, that's something that we need to start looking at. And I've been starting to put in place measures to actually address that and look to improve it moving forwards. No, aspirationally, I would like it to be 99% in both councils.
I think that's the right answer as well. Any other questions, members? In which case, Councillor Edmonds, can I ask you to make the recommendation?
Thanks, Chair. I move the recommendations on page 41.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Cheadle, thank you. Members, any debate on this report? Okay, so I'll move to a vote. All those in favour?
7 unanimous. Thank you, Leader, for the 3 recommendations.
Thank you. Members, we'll move on to item 10, the council tax discretionary policy. And if I could ask Councillor Edmonds to introduce this paper. Councillor Edmonds.
Thank you, Chair. As a council, we're able to support residents with discretionary council tax discounts when they experience exceptional life events which impact on their ability to pay their council tax. The Local Government Finance Act 1992 gives billing authorities like West Devon Borough Council the discretionary power to reduce or further reduce the amount of council tax a person is liable to pay. This discretion is in addition to various statutory reductions, discounts and disregards which reduce the amount of council tax payable in specific circumstances. The Council last agreed a council tax discretionary discount policy in September 2015. It's good practice to review policies at appropriate intervals, and during the current cost of living crisis, it is also important for the council to set out all the support it is able to offer residents. The proposed council tax discretionary discount policy, attached at Appendix A, sets out a policy framework for assessing applications for discretionary council tax discounts. It is important to stress that these powers will only ever be exercised in exceptional circumstances, as the cost of any discount is wholly met by the council. The council also has an exceptional hardship fund which supports residents receiving council tax reduction but who are still struggling to pay their council tax. Both policies ensure that we continue to provide residents with certainty that we will try and support them in paying their council tax during both significant one-off life events and times of financial hardship. The report has 2 recommendations, Chair. Firstly, that the Hub Committee grant approval to implement the council tax discretionary discount policy from the 1st of April 2023. And secondly, delegate authority to the Director of Strategic Finance to agree awards of council tax discretionary discount which have been recommended for authorisation by the Principal Revenues Officer in consultation with the Head of Revenues and Benefits. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Members, any questions? Councillor Cheadle.
Yes, a straightforward one, I think. I mean, this is a policy that we review every year, I think.
The last review was in 2015.
Oh, as long ago as that? Okay.
Yeah.
I just wondered if there's any particular change to having reviewed it. Is it essentially the same policy as it was? I haven't got the sort of 2 side by side to see if there's any difference.
No, perhaps I can just refer that to Mrs. Hofkes to just confirm that, please.
Because obviously the previous, I've only been here since last September. I'm not totally familiar with the content of the previous policy. So it will essentially say the same thing. It's just looking to crystallise the approach and the framework that we would take in considering these discount applications.
Yes, my understanding is we do every one on a case-by-case basis. So our logic for doing it is much the same as it's always been. We haven't made some big change in direction as a result of this. We're pretty much doing what we've always done.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just clarifying the framework, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Cheadle. Any other questions, members? In which case, Councillor Edmonds, could you move the recommendations, please?
Yes, Chair, thank you. I move the recommendations that can be found on page 57 of your agenda papers.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Any debate on this issue, members? In which case, we'll move to a vote. All those in favour?
That's unanimous, the recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, members. Councillor Edmonds is now relieved that he can have a bit of a break. Thank you, Leader. Well done on getting through that lot. We're going to move on to item 11, which is the housing crisis update. Members, a report has been circulated which provides updates on a number of projects and also details an opportunity to acquire a number of properties with some government assistance. That opportunity arises as a result of a local authority housing fund which will provide up to 50% of funding to purchase up to 5 properties to provide accommodation for those displaced by conflict in Afghanistan and Ukraine. This is very welcome. We know that some families living with hosts, for example, will need to be reaccommodated as priority cases, and this proposal will enable them to be looked after without impacting on the already hard-pressed affordable and social housing sector. As part of the proposal, we are seeking with other districts to secure funding from Devon County Council for the balance of the purchase prices from the contingency element of the Homes for Ukraine Fund. If successful, this will ultimately provide the Council with up to 5 homes for this purpose. These properties will be owned by the Council and available for future use as temporary accommodation in the event that they are not taken up by refugees or that need no longer exists. The report also sets out our plans to redevelop 20 Plymouth Road, next to the bus station, currently offered for rent as office space, into 3 flats as per the plans included. A pre-planning application has been submitted, and if positive, we are looking to commission the preparation of a full planning application at an estimated cost of £30,000, including surveys, to be financed from the Homeless Prevention Funds. Councillors will also note that work continues on Spring Hill, with pre-construction services contract having been entered into. The results of the design and construction cost work are expected soon. In addition, an architect has been engaged to look at the Wanacott site and establish baseline viability to inform the pre-planning application process. This report is expected soon, with a full business case expected towards the end of this year. Members, that outlines a number of ways in which we're responding to the housing crisis. Are there any questions on the content of the report? Councillor Cheadle.
Thank you. The first part of the report, which is about the potential for buying up to 5 houses, which, as the report says, is to a degree contingent on Devon County Council meeting the difference between what the government pledges and what the costs will be. Says to be negotiated. What is the plan if Devon County Council don't come up with the money?
Thank you, Councillor Cheadle. I believe that the Chief Executive is able to give us a bit of an update on that one.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, the figure has already been confirmed. I'm sorry. Yes, I can. Yeah, the figure has already been negotiated and confirmed since the publishing of the report. It happened last week. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Edmonds has a question.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I think the first thing to say is that I welcome this initiative and we should take full advantage of this. It's probably far too early to ask this question, but I'll ask it anyhow. But any initial thoughts on perhaps location of where these properties may be purchased?
Thank you. Are you able to have a go at answering that one?
It would be likely that they would be in the north of the borough on account of the more generous local housing allowance that exists because it's in a broad market area with Exeter. So the rent would go would go further at covering our costs. But we will also look at where we'll get those opportunities as well as time goes on. We're looking at new build properties predominantly under 10 years old.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that reminds me of another point. We're looking at new build properties. Will we be looking at properties that are already perhaps under construction rather than waiting for a developer to decide that they're going to develop a particular site?
The expectation is that these properties we'll have committed to these properties by November, and completion will be well underway. So these are likely to be properties that are quite far along in the construction process.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blake. I guess there's also an advantage with properties that may be situated in Oakhampton, for example, in terms of communications to Exeter with the rail link and so on. Okay, Councillor Wood has a question. Sorry, I do apologise. Councillor Daniel has a question.
Thank you, Chair. A recent property came up for social rental in my ward, and 5 families bid for it. So there are 5 families in need. And yet I've also heard that Live West are selling one of our social houses yet again. So that will make the 3rd since I've been a councillor. And I'm wondering what we can do about that. Is there any pressure that we can put on them to bring these up to the standard required rather than sell them onto the open market? Thank you.
Mrs. Blake, are you able to answer that?
We actually conveniently have a conversation, me and Chris, with Live West later today around their disposals process and about how many properties we're likely to carry on losing. There has been quite aggressive disposals in West Devon. I know it's a thing that is a particular bugbear of members. So we are looking at that. We have disposed of our stock. Our stock transfer agreement that was written quite some time ago is largely silent on these things, so it will be about working in partnership to try and resolve some of that.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? In which case, there is a question from Councillor Wood. I was obviously gazing into my crystal ball then. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Councillor Jury. So just to be clear then, we're proposing to buy the houses, and they are going to be for the people who are being displaced from Ukraine, and then the ones in by the bus station on Plymouth Road, isn't it? It's called. Their temporary accommodation. Okay, all right then, yeah. Sorry, that was just a question. I sort of got it the other way round when we were talking about it before, and yeah.
The view is that those properties that we buy through the local authority housing fund will be ours in perpetuity. So if there is ever not a requirement to use those properties by displaced or placement breakdowns from the Ukrainians, or the Afghans currently in bridging hotels, then we can use those to meet our own housing objectives. And that's not in the next 2 years, that's as and when there's not a need. So that they haven't set a time requirement on that.
Okay, thank you. Do you mind if I ask another question? Is that okay? So when you're thinking about the area, you were talking earlier about and you were sort of thinking about purchasing those in the north of the borough. Have you been sort of considering how these people might sort of integrate into the community? Is that part of what you're thinking about? Thank you.
That's absolutely, as the scheme has progressed, as we're now into year 2 of the Homes for Ukraine scheme, we are very much focused on how best to integrate people to make sure that they've got the support so that they can contribute and be part of their communities rather than just staying with a host family. Some of them are in really rural areas, and it's been a struggle for them to access employment or training opportunities. So we're working with them now for that next step.
Thank you very much. That's great.
Thank you. Councillor Ewing, do you have a question?
I don't have a question on this bit, but I do on Plymouth Road and Spring Hill. So I don't know whether we're doing it all in one, or you're just doing the houses, the 5 houses first.
Now would be a good time to take a question on 20 Plymouth Road, so far away.
Okay. Right, sorry, I'm going to have to say Izzy because I can't think of your surname for the minute. It's gone. You wrote to the Tavistock members a while ago when this document was in private and we weren't to share it, etc. But now it is a public document. Most of us wrote back to you and said we were very concerned about losing the kiosk from the bus station, as we could be looking to rent it out again and have facilities available when people come to Tavistock, and we are encouraging them to travel by bus, etc. Is there any news on what is going to happen with that part of the plan? That's my Plymouth Road question.
Are you okay to either Ms. Wotton or Mrs. Blake?
Yeah, so we included it for the purposes of pre-app, so we could understand the planning implications of the whole building, if you like. But we will be, from the feedback that we've had through that process and through the discussions that we've had with others, we will only be proceeding on the 3 sort of self-contained units and not the bus station, if of course it gets approved.
Thank you, Ms. Wotton. I gather that was some feedback that came via the pre-application process. So I think your request from the Tavistock members has been listened to, and the plan now is to go for an application for 3 flats. Any other questions, members?
Yes, my other question is about Spring Hill. It says in the report, the contractor, but it doesn't say who the contractor is. Is that because we haven't got a contractor and we're putting it to, the tender documents together, or have we got a preferred contractor now? It's not very clear as to what's really going on. It needs to be a discussion out of this meeting. I'm quite happy about that.
We are having discussions with a particular contractor through a pre-construction services contract, and depending on the outcome of that process, i.e. what the costs look like, the programme, etc., there would be a subsequent award if that process is, the outcome of that process is positive.
As a quick supplement to that bit, because we have planning permission and everything else, and it's all ready to go. Do you have or envisage a date when we will actually make a start on this project? Because it's a long way behind now.
The business case will come back to members, and there will be a decision based on the cost, about whether you wish to pursue that project. And then if that is positive, then we will be ready to press go. As you say, we've got planning on it. So that's where we're at now. We're just waiting for the business case to come back to you after the work that these cost consultants do.
Thank you, Mrs. Blake. I've now remembered your surname.
Thank you, Councillor Ewing. So any other questions, members? In which case, I'd like to move the recommendations. There are 4, and they are contained on page 67 of the agenda items. If I could have a seconder for those 4 recommendations, please. Councillor Cheadle, thank you. Members, any debate on this report? Councillor Cheadle.
Well, I'd just like to say the the opportunity that's come our way to buy 5 houses to help ease the issue of Ukrainian and Afghan refugees, and in the longer term play into the homeless strategy, the housing strategy, is hugely welcomed. And I think it's really good news. And let's hope we can pull it off.
Thank you. I think we all welcome that. Any other debate, members? In which case we'll move to a vote. All those in favour of the recommendations?
That is unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, members. If we can move to item 12, which is a plan for West Devon Year 3 delivery plan. Members, we adopted our plan in September 2021 and have been working on the delivery of thematic targets since then. Progress has been monitored through advisory groups, thematic updates to Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and quarterly integrated management reports to Hub. Lead members, with the assistance of their advisory groups, were requested to develop delivery plans for the 3rd year of the programme, with the opportunity to make alterations reflecting changes to our priorities. These proposals have now been assimilated into our Year 3 delivery plan, which is attached. The plan represents, in my view, a continuation of our aspirational plans to deliver projects that benefit the residents of West Devon. Changes are highlighted in the document and show that the plan continues to evolve and progress. Very happy to take any questions there might be on the plan, and I'm sure lead members will be happy to take questions on their specific part of the plan if anything arises. Any questions, members? In which case, members, I'd like to move the recommendation of the report, which is set out on page 101, that the Hub Committee recommend to Council to approve the minor amendments to the Year 3 plan for West Devon delivery plans, as set out in Appendix A. Any debate, members? Move to Councillor Edmonds.
Thanks, Chair. Just an observation, really. In the Audit Committee agenda, which has been published, the internal audit progress report is on that agenda, and I've noted that when they tested the area of corporate strategy and performance management, it was graded, their finding was of substantial assurance. So that covers the corporate strategy, the thematic delivery plans, and the reporting process. So, you know, really that's a great result, and I think it's great thanks to Mr. Hawke, who I know has been very instrumental in developing this corporate strategy and everything that flowed out of it. So I just thought I'd just like to mention that, and I fully support the updated delivery plans.
Thank you, and I'd echo my thanks to Mr. Hawke as well. Mr. White, can I just check? Did I omit to get a seconder for the... can I rewind slightly, members? And Councillor Edmonds, are you happy to second? Thank you. Thank you for your contribution to the debate. Members, any further debate? In which case we'll move to a vote. All those in favour?
That's 7 unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, members. We'll move to item 13, which is recruitment and retention. Members, in keeping with many organisations, the Council is currently experiencing recruitment and retention challenges, especially in the senior and technical roles. In 2022, the Council introduced a market supplement policy that enables an enhancement to be made to the salary of certain roles and undertook a job evaluation exercise on all principal, professional and technical roles. As a result, it is proposed to institute a new pay band for senior technical and professional roles and some changes to the top of the salary range for senior and principal officers at levels 5 and above. Background and details are set out in the report. It's also worth noting that it's important to take into account that shared working with South Hams District Council already allows us to, in my view, punch above our weight, to recruit senior managers who have meaningful roles and challenges and to recruit quality staff that we wouldn't otherwise be able to attract. It also saves us a considerable amount in terms of economies of scale. However, it also adds a level of complexity that we should take into account. Underpinning all this is the need for us to consider our ambitions. Do we want to be a council which works for our residents, that does things well, is innovative and proactive, or do we just want to cut costs? If the former, we must look at how we recruit and retain individuals at senior level who are able to deliver the services that we aspire to. In seeking to be ambitious, the report also includes a copy of our Organisational Development Plan 2023 to 2026, which sets out our commitment and long-term vision for how we will lead, manage, support and develop our employees. I commend that report to you. It's absolutely how we wish to develop the organisation and our officers. Also attached is a separate LGA report on Chief Executive and Senior Officer pay, which was commissioned by me and the leader at South Hams District Council. The LGA report looked at salaries in 26 district councils that have a joint chief executive, and comparative salaries across Devon, and comparative salaries of Devon district directors. It shows that we are out of line, and it makes two recommendations. A 3-point scale for the chief executive, 135,000, 140,000 and 145,000 per annum, and a 3-point scale for directors of 85,000, 90,000 and 95,000 respectively. The cost to West Devon of these changes would be £14,500. We're going to move into questions in a moment, members. I'm going to ask the Chief Exec to remain in the room to help answer any questions, but he's very kindly agreed to leave the room whilst we have a debate so as not to influence our discussion. So on that note, members, are there any questions about the report in front of you? That, I think, Mr. Bates, gives you quite an easy task, and we'll see you in a moment. In that case, members, I'd like to move the recommendations. The recommendations are set out on page 141. And can I have a seconder for those recommendations, please? Councillor Cheadle, thank you. Members, any debate on this issue? Councillor Ewings, if you'd like to come forward.
I'm happy to acquiesce to your help, members first.
Thank you. Councillor,
No, you go first.
Councillor Wood, that's you.
Hierarchy here.
There is.
Oh, there is. Okay. All right.
There is, but we're nice about it. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Councillor Jory. Thank you, Councillor Ewings as well. I wanted to say that you know, I fully endorse this, and you know, looking through the report that Andy Bates has, you know, what's it called, organisational development plan that he's put together. It's really nice to read, and I think a lot of thought has gone into that. It's really important these days to you know, and forever, to value the people who work for us in councils. They do such an important job, you know, and it's so varied, and it's a great opportunity for people coming out of school to go into that as a career. And I think that's really what has been set out in this plan, that, you know, there's a job for all sorts of different people, and, you know, they'll keep you, look after you, and make sure that you're happy in your work, you know. And really good to see as well that there's sort of a learning and development plan as well, within that plan, which I think keeps people engaged and valued as well. So I think this is great, and really happy to endorse it.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Councillor Ewing, did you want to add anything to that?
I would totally endorse what Councillor Wood has said, and thank Mr. Wilson for his report as well. Thank you. I read the LGA document before it came out with these documents, and I think I forwarded it to you, didn't I, Leader, in case it had been missed, about the pay of chief execs. And, you know, I could remember what our chief exec was paid and knew it was below what the LGA report was talking about, which is why I did forward it to my compatriots and the leaders and deputy leaders team. We here, and in my years that I've been here, I've seen many staff work their way up to some of the roles that they've achieved now. And that is because we do have a learning and development programme within our setup here. But more importantly, what this does at the top end of directors' pay and just that level below is it shows that people are representing over 300,000 people when you put our two authorities together. And if we want to attract people that want to maybe move away from city life, where they're getting these sorts of salaries in some of the urban councils, that we are a match. We can give you your living standards, we can give you the views, the vistas, and everything else of living in this part of the world, which is not, you know, city life, commuting for 2 hours on a train or whatever to get to work. And having these salaries at these levels will attract more of that calibre of person to come down with their families, hopefully not to retire, which is what head teachers do. But, you know, we would be encourage them as young families to come into this area. And I think it also gives the staff that we have something to really aim for, but to be valued at a national standard, not just as little rural West Devon, which is how we're often seen. And I know over the years when we've had trouble recruiting planning officers, there had to be something put in place quite a few years ago, which Mr. Wilson will remember, because we couldn't attract anybody that we needed to come and work with us. So I think we do need to have an enhancement on our pay to recruit the right people to take this organisation forward, but also to help us members to be able to deliver what we want to residents through the West Devon plan, and to bring some of their ideas, fresh ideas, into these into, you know, the two councils working as one at times. And I think that is really important. So completely endorse this report and the chief exec's level as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ewings. I think there's another dimension to that as well, and I take on board everything you say, and I don't know whether Mr. Wilson is able to confirm this, but I think in many of our roles, probably now the employment market has changed and is now a national market because people are able to work from home and work using the technology. So that has changed the dimension as well. I don't know whether you want to comment on that at all, but I think that is the case.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, just to confirm, we are now operating in a national market, very much so. Home working has made a massive difference. And we are now competing with people who can work in the southeast but live in the southwest.
Thank you. Councillor Cheadle.
Well, first of all, I thoroughly endorse the report. You've got to pay the staff the right level to get the right staff. But my eye is drawn to the photograph on the organisation and development plan. And the cheque there says, dinner on Steve. And so one of my questions is, has he honoured that commitment that clearly that cheque was set out to deliver? And secondly, it's a shame that he isn't in the picture, because we all know that this was a recognition of the huge effort that went into the waste contract reorganisation, which he played a pivotal role in. I think when I say he isn't in the picture, there's a baldish head on the left-hand side hiding behind a computer, and I'm guessing that might be him.
I think, as you say, he was just sort of slightly, or in this case, slightly in shot. But yes, I'm sure the sentiment.
But I mean, if ever there was an example of the sort of calibre of management that we need when the chips are down, I think the chief exec and Mr. Molyneux demonstrated that in spades.
Well, I'm sure that's true, and we have had some really difficult things to deal with over the past 4 years. I think the organisation as a whole has stood up to those really, really well. That's testament to the calibre of the people we have in the organisation, but also to the leadership that those senior officers have brought to the occasion as well. So I'm sure that's much appreciated. Any other debate, members? In which case we'll move to a vote. All those in favour?
That's unanimous, those recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. And members, that brings the meeting to a close. I think we are now moving on to a mayoral awards situation shortly.
4 o'clock, Chair.
4 o'clock. So
chance to stretch your legs and
bring the chief exec back in.
grab a cup of
And
tea.
yes, we can now go off air, I think, Steve, if that's okay. Thank you, everybody.